Hey guys, it's the WalterFootball.com After Dark show for June 26, 2024. We're going to be doing the AFC South and NFC South season previews. We did the AFC West and NFC West last week, so you can check that out in our archive if you want to hear that. But yeah, we're going to go over both divisions today with our co-host, Jacob. Before we do the introductions, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. As you can see on the screen, we have the merch store, and August is coming up soon, which is Gluttony Month, so you can get that and all our other shirts here. And I, as always say, like these shirts are like $18 right now. You can save 15%. Some are $19. I'm not sure why they're different, but yeah, you can get all these shirts here, and I think like $18, $19, as we were saying yesterday, in this economy, these shirts are good value. Like they're quality shirts, and even if you don't like the messages on there, you can just get a quality shirt for $18 or $19. I think it's a good deal. So as you can see on the screen, we have so many options. I was wearing some of these recently. The money laundering one here. I walked into the gym wearing it. Like two guys stopped me, like, "Oh, that's the coolest shirt I've ever seen." So yeah, you can get all this stuff here at the merch store via the link. Also, please consider super chats, super stickers. We had $20 worth of super stickers from Kevin Kovac yesterday, and also John Sanders contributed as well. So yeah, we had Slew in the past, Germ, Degeneron. All you guys have been so awesome with your contributions. So we really want to keep the show going, and like that's one way to do it, because these YouTube ads pay nothing, as I always say. We'd have better luck like going outside and pick up change on the ground with these compared to these YouTube ad revenues. So that's one way to support the show. Another way is to go into Amazon and buy my book, Jerks to the College Years. If you like Jerks of the Week, I think you'll like Jerks to the College Years. It's basically the same thing, just from my years in college. I spent 6 years at Penn State. So I met a bunch of these weirdos, including this guy right here in the middle. He used to play quarterback for Penn State. So you could probably know who it is because I've mentioned him before. But I have a crazy story about him and lots of other crazy stories. So just buying this book is another way to help out the show. And also just leave comments, questions. It doesn't have to be about this or even football. We'll answer everything as you guys know. So without further ado, we are joined by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here, and glad to be continuing on with our season previews.
Yeah, I can't wait for this one. We had, I think we agreed for the most part on all the AFC and NFC West teams. We had two exact same records. I think the furthest apart we were, I think we had like one team that was like 3 wins apart. We had a couple that were 2 and a couple that were 1, but then we agreed on 2. So yeah, hopefully we have more agreements here. It'd be nice to be in complete lockstep for the Super Contest coming up. I'll be in Vegas in a few weeks to enter that, so I'm looking forward to it. But I figured we start in the AFC South. We started with the AFC West last week, so might as well start with the AFC South. The Texans are the favorite here. Going to pull these odds up on the screen. We'll get to the odds. We'll discuss the odds at the end. Texans are plus 105 to win the AFC South. Much different than it was last year. I think last year at this time, people are like, oh, the Jaguars are just going to run this division because they have Trevor Lawrence, and the Jaguars were the favorites. And you have the Colts and the Texans and Titans, I think, after that in that order. But now the Texans are the favorites because they have C.J. Stroud. They went to the second round last year. Do you think the Texans are going to keep improving, or do you think they're going to have a setback in Stroud's second year?
I thought coming into the offseason, I thought it was possible that there was going to be a sort of sophomore slump for C.J. Stroud because I thought that Bobby Slowick might end up getting a head coaching job. But the fact that he's sticking around and that the team's continued to add to its receiving core and offense, I mean, getting Stephon Diggs has been huge for them. And I know Joe Mixon isn't like – he's a bigger name than he is talent probably at this point, but he's still an upgrade over what C.J. Stroud had in the backfield last year. So with the way the offense is looking, I think that the Texans are probably not going to endure much of a slump. They should continue improving. We can question how much of that will kind of continue. We'll see if NFL defensive coordinators are able to better understand and figure out how to plan against Stroud. But with a solid offensive line, so many receiving weapons around him. I mean, he has 3 legitimate starting receivers. And John Mechie was a second-round pick a couple years ago. Noah Brown has looked good sparing action. Dalton Schultz was great last year as his number 1 tight end. this offense has the potential to be one of the most consistent units in the league if Stroud plays like he did in his rookie season. I think it's fair to wonder how much the defense is going to improve. They've added some veteran defensive talent. They got I always do this. It's either Danielle or Daniil Hunter. I think it's Daniil. But I think getting him to replace Jonathan Grenard was a good thing. They are going to be able to get more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Hunter is proven in that area. Danico Autry is another guy that can help them out. Will Anderson looked good as a rookie. So having that stable of pass rushers, I think, is going to be good for them. If they can just hold it together on that side and play as hard as they did under D'Amico Ryans last year, I like this team's potential. So I think they're rightly favored in this division. I don't think it's an absolute lock that they're going to win it. I think they're going to face more competition than people realize from the other teams in it. But I do have them going 11-6, and I do presently have them as the number one team in the division.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think they have to be considered the favorites. John's saying the title says AFC West and NFC South, false advertising. Sorry, John. I think I fixed it. I think it should be fixed now. So, so thanks for the heads up. I mean, the Texans have made some moves this offseason, which are pretty intriguing. Like, they just don't know if they're going to work. Because you have Stephon Diggs joining the receiving corps to go with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And Tank Dell was injured for the playoffs last year. He got injured in like week 12 or week 13. And, now he's going to be back. And you have Stephon Diggs as well. But Stephon Diggs in the second half of last year just did nothing. Now, some of that might have been the new scheme with Joe Brady. We don't know. But then again, he is in his 30s now. So this decline could be permanent. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to pan out. I suspect Diggs is going to do better than he did in the second half of last year, but is he going to be the same as he ever was? I just don't know. They drafted Blake Fisher, which is kind of intriguing because this move could really be two upgrades because if Blake Fisher is an upgrade over Titus Howard, right tackle, you also have Titus Howard moving to guard, which was a problem last year. So it could be like 2-for-1 upgrades. And the offensive line was an issue in that playoff loss to Baltimore. They just couldn't block the Ravens. And so getting two potential upgrades in the offensive line could be great, but you just don't know how Blake Fisher is going to play. And then defensively, they made a lot of changes that you detailed. Like they lost some of their talented defensive linemen. They got a couple of good ones. They lost some talent at linebacker, which concerns me a bit. Blake Cashman and Denzel Perriman, like those are two good linebackers that they had. We'll see if Aziz Al-Shaair does well, but in the secondary, they drafted Kamari Lassiter with their first pick, so that could help. So a lot of some question marks here. Like I feel like the core of the team is going to do well though, and I think this team has a high floor as long as they have C.J. Stroud healthy and these talented receivers, and I suspect they're going to be able to run the ball well with Joe Mixon behind an improved offensive line. So I think this team has a high floor. And they have an enormous ceiling too. Like they could win the Super Bowl. They're definitely on the short list. Although there are a lot of teams in the AFC in the short list, but they're gonna be there. And with CJ Stroud having experience for once, I think that's definitely a positive for the Texans. So I have them going 12-5. Do you have a record for them?
Yeah, I've got 11-6. So we're right in that same projection. 1 win difference is practically nothing, and I could easily see them going 12-5. I think if the Texans were in the NFC, I'd be pounding the table for them as like this is a Super Bowl type team. This is a Super Bowl caliber contender. It's just, can they sift through that traffic in the AFC? And the division around them is going to be better this year than it was last year. And even then, they still they had a win-in game in the final week of the season, and they couldn't quite finish their opponents couldn't quite finish the job of winning the division. Texans were able to do it, which is, kudos to C.J. Stroud, D'Amico Ryans for getting that done. But, they're going to face some strong competition if their opponents stay healthy.
Yeah, and they definitely have some strong competition there. And so we'll get to that in a second. We have questions here. John asking, better division, AFC South or AFC North? I think it's the North. There are no weak teams in the North. Like the Bengals are a Super Bowl contender. The Ravens were last year. They lost some pieces. We'll talk about them next week. But they'll be in the mix. You have the Browns, who had the best defense in the NFL last year. If they could get Deshaun Watson to get like 80% of what he was in 2020, like they'll be a contender as well for the Super Bowl. And then the Steelers are the worst team, but they always finish with a winning record. Whereas like in the AFC South, you have the Titans, who are clearly the worst team. I think, well, maybe you'll disagree, but I think the Titans, I think they're going to be better than people think. But compared to the Steelers, I think they're definitely worse. So I would say AFC North is better.
Yeah, I think the AFC North has 3 legitimate Super Bowl contenders. I think the AFC South has 1 or 2 legitimate Super Bowl contenders, 3 playoff contenders, but it wouldn't surprise me if any of the AFC North teams make the postseason. I think it would surprise me if the Titans make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty shocking. There are 3 teams in the AFC where I'm like, I can't see these teams making the playoffs at all. The Titans, the Broncos, and the Patriots. Like I feel like every other team could make the playoffs. It just those 3, I just can't see it. So that's why I would say the North is the better division. John says, so we have disagreement here. John says Diggs didn't lose a step, unfortunately, but Parrott says Diggs definitely lost a step, but I think all the other weapons will help him. He disappeared last year, but I could imagine it's hard when the number 2 is Gabe Davis. And that is definitely true. I mean, teams are not going to be able to focus on him with all the other weapons. Or if they do, like Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz are going to go nuts. So they can't really do that. Then again, you also have to factor in that Stephon Diggs turns 31 in November. Like 31 seems to be the magical age for receivers to go downhill. It's obviously not the case for everyone, but it feels like on average 31 is the year that receivers start declining. So even if like you could argue that Diggs didn't lose a step last year, he could lose the step this year, just given his age. So I think seeing how Diggs plays is going to be a really interesting storyline for this year.
Yeah, I think the reason I like the move, though, is I know they paid him a lot of money, but the thing I like is they're not depending on him to be the number 1 guy, because Nico Collins is probably going to be that, given the chemistry he demonstrated with CJ Stroud. Tank Dell, if he stays healthy, he's going to be a weapon. So Diggs could realistically be the number 3 receiver in that room by the end of the season if all goes well. And, if he has to be the number 2, that's fine, I think.
Oh, yeah. Even if number 3, like it's understandable given how good Collins was last year, and he got that big contract, and Dell looked like, he looked like a great threat as a rookie. Just I kind of wonder how far the Texans may have gotten had he stayed healthy. Maybe they still lose to Baltimore, but I think that's going to be more competitive of a game if he's still there. All right, so if the Texans falter here, Stroud either gets hurt or suffers a sophomore slump or something, who do you think wins the division between Jacksonville and Indianapolis?
Yeah, so I was torn on this one. I actually have them having the same record.
Okay.
But I have the Jaguars in second place based off the tiebreakers. Don't ask me what they are. I don't know. I have the software that does it for me online, Playoff Predictor. You can use it yourself. And that's it's a great website for that, all that stuff. I like the Jaguars as a potential bounce back team. I think they're going to have a harder time this year schedule wise, just because their division is stronger. But we so quickly forget last year that this team was 8-3. It looked like they were waltzing to a division title. We all thought they were going to wrap it up. And then all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence gets hurt for the first time in his professional and collegiate career. Yeah, I think even his high school career. And he tried to play through as much of it as he could. His Ironman streak eventually came to an end. But the Jaguars just weren't the same when he was banged up, and it showed. But now he's had a whole offseason to get healthy, and the team has continued to add weapons around him. They signed Gabe Davis. They added Brian Thomas Jr., who I think has real boom potential. I don't think we've been talking about him quite enough compared to some of the other big receiver acquisitions, not just us, but just generally. I don't think people are talking about him enough. And I think like Gabe Davis, again, this is going to be a role where Christian Kirk's going to be there to take attention away from him. If Brian Thomas pans out like the Jaguars think he will based off where they selected him, Davis, if he's the third receiver, is going to be able to really stretch the field and open things up for Lawrence. So I like the direction of this offense. I think their offensive line should be better. They signed Mitch Morse at free agency, just a proven veteran center. Ezra Cleveland should be better with more time with the team. So I like the interior offensive line. They have young tackle in Anton Harrison, who should be better in his second season. So there's a lot to like on that side of the ball. Defensively, there are probably a few more holes, but still, I think they have enough talent there, and their pass rushing looks like it could be very good. You have Josh Allen there. They signed Eric Armstead. So having those two guys is going to be huge. Trayvon Walker's going into his third season. He has the athletic potential needed to be great. So you look at this collection of defensive pass rushers that they have, that can really provide a boost to this overall stop unit. Do I have some concerns about the secondary? Sure. I think that's their weakness as a team. But as long as their offense stays healthy, I think if they get into shootouts, they're going to be able to compete. So I think they're going to have some bumps in the road, but I ultimately have them finishing 9-8. That's good for second place in the division. And they, I think, sneak into the playoffs in this iteration of my predictions. They are the 7th seed.
$10 super sticker from Kevin Kovac. Thank you so much, Kevin. Really appreciate it. You're super help around here with $20 yesterday, $10 today. Thank you so much. Just really appreciate it. If you have any comments, we'll get to them right away. But yeah, thank you so much. John says Jaguars seem to have as much hype last offseason as the Texans do this offseason. I could see that. I think people expected the Jaguars to take the next step last year, given that they went to the second round and they ended up losing to the Chiefs. Texans kind of had the season that everyone expected the Jaguars to have, or at least the Jaguars had the previous year, where they won the division, then they got to the second round of the playoffs, and then they lost again. Like, I feel like people thought that was going to happen again. Like the Jaguars are going to hit a wall, against the Chiefs or maybe the Ravens, and that's what happened to the Texans here last year. But it could have, the Jaguars could revert to that, as you said in your analysis. It was Trevor Lawrence going down with so many injuries. I called him the Black Knight from the Monty Python movies at one point, because it was like every single week it was a new injury. It's like shoulder here, leg here, concussion at one point. Like he picked up something new every week. It was astonishing to see how banged up he was by the end. And people forget, like, the Jaguars were 8-3 before Lawrence started getting hurt. And they won one game down the stretch, finished 9-8. So I think they're going to be better this year as long as Lawrence stays healthy. And given his track record that you mentioned, I feel like why wouldn't he stay healthy? So I think the Jaguars will bounce back. The Gabe I'm not crazy about the Gabe Davis signing, but Brian Thomas has immense potential. It's kind of like, think about it, because early in the offseason when they first drafted him, he's raw. It may take him a year or two to develop. And then I kind of I thought to myself, I'm like, this is the exact same thing I said about DK Metcalf. Metcalf was this all-world super talent, but he was considered very raw heading into the NFL. And I remember being asked about Metcalf. I'm like, I like him long-term. I just don't know about him this year. And he was a monster as a rookie. So Thomas could easily be a monster as a rookie, especially given that Lawrence is throwing to him. You mentioned the pickups they had on the offensive line, Cleveland during the trade deadline last year, and Mitch Morse. Mitch Morse is not great by any means, but he's solid. He's much better than what they had last year at center. And then Anton Harrison was a rookie last year. He struggled, but he's going to have more experience now, so he can't play worse. So you expect him to play better. The defense got, as you mentioned, Eric Armstead, Darnell Savage, two upgrades. Their pass defense was horrible last year, and I don't know how much better it's going to be, but their pass rush is going to be really good. So that should be able to make up for it. So this team is going to be in the mix. It wouldn't shock me if they won the Super Bowl. I don't think they will. I still think they have some flaws, tackle play, secondary play. We'll see. I'm not crazy about Doug Peterson either, but this team is going to be in the playoff mix. I have them 10-7, so one win more. So I guess a running theme here, because I also have the Colts and Jaguars with the same record. So I have all three of the top AFC South teams with one more win than you do. So I don't know why, but that's just how it played out.
I must be lower on them in some non-divisional matchups. We must have swung the other way. So there's inevitably going to be a division where it's we're separated by one on every one, but I'm in the positive direction on that one. You're in the negative direction. So yeah, it's good that we're in lockstep about the order of them, at least, too, because I think that's a good sign that we at least have a pulse on what should happen in the division if things go well.
Yeah, I wonder which division it is. Maybe it's I think they play the do they play the NFC North? I'm not sure, but because I know they play the Bears at one point. Um so yeah, I wonder which division it is. Like we'll talk about it eventually. Let's see here. John says Jaguars had a weird draft, great first round, and then they seemed to reach for everyone else. Yeah, I mean Brian Thomas, I thought it could be outstanding. Mason Smith, I think he went. If you like looked at mock drafts in like November or October, November, like Mason Smith would have gone earlier than where he went. But he had some issues, so yeah. I think he kind of like went around where he should go, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't like crazy about the pick, but yeah, the other picks for sure. Jerry Jones, Javon Foster, Jordan Jefferson, DeAndre Prince, like. They were those are some sketchy picks for sure. I didn't really love any of them.
Yeah, I really liked Brian Thomas. I like Mason Smith too. I think he's a great upside pick. And where they had added Eric Armstead, it makes sense that, hey, they can take the upside swing on Mason Smith without, worrying too much about, all right, he's got to play a big role right away. But beyond that, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of guys that looked at and said, oh, this guy's going to be a big time contributor right away.
Yeah. Let's see. Parrot asking, is your Colts record including the likelihood of Anthony Richardson going down, or are you just that high on Flacco? I think, let's just get into the Colts. I think that Richardson has a better chance of playing more this year he got hurt in every single game he played last year. So I feel like variance should swing the other way. And I think he's going to play more this year. Now, I do expect him to get injured for several games. I think Flacco will play at least 3 or 4 games, maybe more. But Flacco is better than Gardner Minshew, and Minshew nearly led the Colts to the playoffs last year. So I think the upgrade is pretty significant, and I really like this team overall. Like I think they have a ton of upside. I think this team could win the Super Bowl as well. I think they're probably the best like long shot to win the Super Bowl. I think they're like 55-1. Well, we'll look at the odds in a bit once we're done with this division. But like at 55-1 or 60-1, like I think they're a really good bet because they have so much talent. Like starting with Richardson, like his upside is enormous. If he could stay on the field. I think he could do pretty much anything, and he has great protection in front of him. The Colts offensive line is arguably top 5. Kind of curious if you agree with that, but given that you do offensive line rankings and whatnot, but I'm really impressed with their offensive line. I think they only have like one weakness, which is Fries at guard, but maybe he'll get better. But I think overall this blocking is going to be tremendous. They have Michael Pittman Jr. at receiver, Josh Downs looked good as a slot receiver, and then they drafted Adonai Mitchell in the second round, and Mitchell has great potential as well. He could have gone in the first round, but he had some off the field stuff. Teams didn't like how he handled his diabetes, so like there's definitely some concerns with him. But like you can make a bear case for most draft picks anyway. So like why not just go for the upside? I think that was a really good pick by the Colts, given his sky high potential. And then they got the best defensive player in the draft in Laiatu Latu. Just because like everyone is drafting offense, 6 quarterbacks went in the top 14 picks, and Latu just dropped them at 15 because the Falcons were stupid. So they improved the pass rush, which was already really good. They Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, these are good pass rushers already. They're already getting decent pressure on the quarterback, and now they have Latu added to the mix. Linebacker is a concern. Secondary is not great. It's not bad, but it's not great either. So they have some issues, but I think overall this team has a ton of upside. And also I didn't get to Jonathan Taylor. Like he was holding out last year, then he got hurt, and then he came back, and then he got hurt again. Like he was not on the field at 100% that often last year, and now he has no distractions. I feel like he may have an amazing year. It wouldn't shock me if he led the league in rushing. So I love the Colts coaching staff as well. It's really impressed with Steichen. So I think this team has amazing upside. I have him going 10-7, but if Richardson stays healthy all year and he could take the next step, like this team could go 12-5. Like this team could be a monster, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on what Richardson does in his second year. Obviously, number one concern, stay on the field. That's what he has to do. And I think he's going to be able to do that better than he did last year. I know that's not a ringing endorsement. He only played in a few games, and like you said, he got hurt in all of them. basically. But I think two things are going to have happened. One, I'm sure the coaching staff will have spoken to him and put a plan in place to say, better protect yourself. I know some of that is instinctive and can't be taught and untaught, but I would assume he'll be taking fewer hits this year. And the other main thing that's going to have a huge positive impact on him is that running game is going to be so much better if Jonathan Taylor stays healthy. Because if he's on the field to start the year and not Zach Moss, and that's taking nothing away from Zach Moss. He had a great year last year. He proved me wrong. I was notorious Zach Moss doubter. I was like, he's terrible. Why is he getting these chances as like a part of a running back rotation? He was good for the Colts, so he deserves a lot of credit for that. But Jonathan Taylor is just a different type of beast. He's a true 3-down back, and he's going to be able to be the driving force of this offense. And if he takes on a lot of that workload behind this really good offensive line, which I think you're right, may well be a top 5 unit in the league. I haven't sketched those rankings out in full, but it would surprise me if the Colts aren't among the top 5 is how I'll put it. But him running behind that is going to really keep the Colts offense on schedule. And it's not going to allow teams to get a ton of pressure and rattle Richardson and make him run into big hits as much as they would last year when he was doing a lot of the work himself in the backfield. So for that reason, I like Richardson. I like the offense to kind of be better for long term and this season. And I think the defense is underrated because of that pass rush, like you mentioned. I have concerns about the secondary. If they still had Isaiah Rodgers, that would be one thing, but he is now with the Eagles. So, and he's now no longer suspended too. So that's their big loss that they're dealing with. Back 7 there. But I think that the way that Gus Bradley has coached up that defense, they tend to play well. They tend to be opportunistic. I think they'll be able to match what should be an efficient and explosive offense. So the ceiling is very high for the Colts. The floor is low if Anthony Richardson gets hurt or Jonathan Taylor goes down or Joe Flacco comes into the game and all of a sudden looks completely different than he did last year. So that's why I think some people will be scared off by the Colts. But I think you're right. Among the Super Bowl long shots, they're the one that has probably the best chance of actually putting together some sort of playoff run.
Sue asking, does Jacob have a feel for a 1 through 4 ranking of the offensive lines in the AFC South?
Now, this I can do. It's harder when you do like the full league, and then you have to do ranking the lines that are like 12th through 24th is the hardest part because you get to the middle and you're like, how much better is the Vikings offensive line than, the Jaguars? And then you're like parsing hairs. But within this division, I think the power rankings, I'd go Colts at 1, Texans at 2, Jaguars at 3, Titans at 4 right now. And the Jaguars and Titans have some upside because they have some young players on those units, especially at the tackle position. But I'd say the Colts are the most proven, and they have chemistry, having played together basically for several years. And the Texans, they have pretty strong left side of the line if all goes well. And they drafted Blake Fisher. So if he can play right tackle and kick Titus Howard inside to guard, things look good for that team.
I definitely would say Colts 1 and Titans 4. I was kind of wondering how you would order the Texans and Jaguars. I think they're pretty close. But yeah, that makes sense having the Texans there. But I think with Fisher, I think we just don't know how he's going to play. But if he meets expectations, then I would say Texans too.
And I should say too, Laramie Tunsil I think is a big tiebreaker too, because like when he's on the field for the Texans as the franchise left tackle, you feel really comfortable with him in front of Stroud. And Cam Robinson's gotten better during his career, but I'd still say he's not like an elite left tackle like Tunsil.
Yeah, for sure. John says Ridley likes the Titans at 8-1 to win the AFC South. Well, hopefully he shops around and finds a better number. Let's talk about the Titans here. If there were only two really good teams in this division, then I would say maybe the Titans 8-1 is sort of interesting, but not really, especially with 3 teams. I just can't go that way. Like I said, I think the Titans are going to be better than people think. I think they're going to be a good team to bet on spread-wise. I just don't know if they're going to pull out these wins here. They have a new coaching staff, fairly new quarterback, Will Levis now in his second year. They have a ton of turnover, so I feel like they're going to have to gel here, but I like some of the talent that they added. Offensively, they signed Tony Pollard. I didn't really think they needed a running back, and I think they spent a lot of money on Pollard, which I don't think they should have, but he's still an explosive player. We didn't see it last year because he was coming off a broken leg, but now he's going to be a year removed for that. So I suspect he's going to be better, or at least back to where he was in 2022. And I do like Tajay Spears as a receiver out of the backfield. You have Calvin Ridley joining the team, and I think Ridley could be a nuisance in the locker room. He's going to be playing with the worst quarterback he's ever played with, like not counting like backups with injuries, but like the worst starting quarterback he's ever played with. Like he had Matt Ryan back when Matt Ryan was still decent, and then he had Trevor Lawrence, and now he has Will Levis. So kind of curious to see how Ridley responds, like if he gets frustrated with Will Levis's inconsistency. But the receiving core like suddenly is halfway decent. Compared to where it was at the beginning of last year. They have Ridley. DeAndre Hopkins is way past his prime, but as a number 2 compared to a number 1 last year, it's definitely a better role for him. Tyler Boyd has proven to be a good number 3, and I think Chiggy Okonkwo has a lot of upside. And then you have the receiving threats out of the backfield. So Will Levis has a ton of weapons at his disposal. They had 2 potential upgrades in the offensive line. They signed Lloyd Christianberry to play center, and then they drafted J.C. Latham to play left tackle. We just don't know how Latham's going to play. Like a lot of these Alabama tackles have not panned out. Some have, but most of them haven't. And Latham, I feel like he's more of a right tackle. He's going to be asked to play left tackle. Could be a little disastrous, but they had horrible left tackle play anyway last year, so can't be worse, right? So I feel like the offense should be better, and then the defense, it's going to be tough to throw in the Titans because, first of all, they have a good pass rush with Justin Simmons, Harold Landry, but then they added L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie. These are 2 guys who were number 1 cornerbacks on their teams past couple of years, and now they're going to have 2 number 1 corners on the outside. So Titans pass defense should be really good. I worry about the linebacking core. They're going to start Kenneth Murray, which seems like a disaster. But overall, I think this team is strong. If I had more confidence in Will Levis, I'd say the Titans would have a chance to contend for a playoff spot. Unfortunately, their division's really strong. If they're their NFC, I think they would be an interesting team to potentially get a wild card spot. But I just think there's just too much competition in the AFC for them to be competitive. Or I just didn't say competitive, but to consistently win, I should say. I think they're being competitive. So I have the Titans going 5-12. If they're in the NFC, it had a much easier schedule. I think 8-9 would be in their grasp. But 5-12 for a 4th team here. I think they're the best of the 3 bottom feeders in the AFC at the moment. So what do you think about the Titans?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually I think you like them more than me, but I have them projected for a 6-11 record. So nice. I don't know how that works. Again, it's the schedule. I probably predicted an upset that I needed to predict to make sure a different team didn't make the playoffs. That often ends up happening. It's I need this team to get into the playoffs for my predictions to be as accurate as I want them to be. So I change the result. Anyway, I agree with pretty much everything you said about the Titans. I think they've done a really good job. Rand Carthon, their general manager, deserves a lot of praise for the talent that he's brought aboard. Bare minimum, this team's future is a lot brighter now than it was probably last year in terms of on-the-field talent. We're still going to have to see how Brian Callahan replaces Mike Vrabel. Who got just excellent effort out of the Titans defense, even when it was horrifically banged up and, really had no business containing opposing offenses. So I'm interested to see how things under Brian Callahan and under his defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson's scheme, how things work there. But talent-wise, there's definitely a lot to be excited about. I think the weaknesses for the Titans are going to keep them from legitimately challenging for anything. Those weaknesses are the age of the receiving core, aside from Calvin Ridley. I think if Hopkins and Boyd take a step back, because I think Boyd is in his 30s now. He's in the slot, so maybe that won't matter. Oh, he's 29. He's going to turn 30. So maybe he's got a little more time left than I'm thinking. But, age is starting to become a concern there. The right side of if they plan to play J.C. Latham at left tackle, the right side of the offensive line could end up being an issue. I'm currently seeing that Sadiq Charles is penciled in as their starter. He didn't quite work out for Washington, so I don't know why that's the case over other guys, but that could just be an early training camp thing. Obviously, Will Levis, does he have skills? Sure. Has he put them all together? I don't know. Will he put them all together? I don't know. We'll see. And then the middle of the field on defense scares me a little bit. The linebackers you mentioned. I do like Amani Hooker at safety, but I just question whether they're going to be able to consistently stop the run. I know they drafted Tavondre Sweat, whose skill set I like, but I know he had some character concerns too. So, yeah, there's some stuff that worries me about this team. So I think 6-11, 5-12 is probably the appropriate projection for them. But hey, wouldn't surprise me if they're really competitive, especially in the early going of the season, and people are like, oh, maybe they're not. Even if their record's 1-6, people might be like, oh, they're a lot more competitive than that record says.
Yeah, I think if they're 1-6, their spread record might be like 4-3 or 5-2. I could see them like having the best spread record, one of the best spread records in the NFL, because just right now people think they suck, and I don't think they suck. I think they are like they're close. I think they're close to being average, but in the AFC you have to be much better on average to be average. So it's a weird dynamic here in the NFL where the AFC is just so much stronger than the NFC at the moment. Sue says the word is Ridley doesn't hedge. It's a running joke we have with John Sanders. Or catches the ball exactly. Sue says when he bets the under on his receptions. I think wasn't really just betting on his own team. I don't think he ever bet against his team, right? Like it was just he was very bullish on his own outlook, right?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain he wasn't even betting when he was playing. He was betting while he was away from the team. But he was betting on his team. So then the whole thing became like, oh, he could have inside information. It was just that they couldn't have him betting on NFL games, especially ones involving his team. So that's why they came down hard on him. Insider
information. He should just run for Congress and he could just make all the bets he wants. Lunty says, hey, Walt, long time to talk. Hey, it's been a while. Thanks for joining us again. Khalil Shakir is my number one sleeper in fantasy football. Sorry if you already covered that. We talked about sleepers a couple weeks ago. I think like what we were talking about with Kenny, like Kenny doesn't like Shakir all that much just because like it is one of the rules that we mentioned yesterday. We did a show yesterday on like top 5 mistakes fantasy football owners make. And one of Kenny's rules was don't draft someone just because there's no one else. So like, I think that might apply in Buffalo. It's like, hey, there's no one else at receiver. It's got to be Khalil Shakir, right? Well, it may not be. And like the example we gave was like 2022 Kansas City Chiefs, where like everyone's like, oh, it might be Juju Smith-Schuster. It might be Kadarius Toney after he was traded for, or it could be someone else. And like, no receiver stepped up. It was just Travis Kelce doing everything, or like Pacheco, or like some running backs catching balls out of the backfield, like and just Mahomes spreading the ball around like crazy. It just may not be Shakir. It could be, it could be Curtis Samuel, it could be Keon Coleman, but it could be just like mostly Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox and James Cook catching passes out of the backfield. Like that's what it could be. But I do see the appeal with Shakir though. Like I think he's worth a shot late in the draft. I don't know what his ADP is. I'm going to look it up real fast. Khalil Shakir is his ADP is 131 overall. So that would be 11-11, which is I think it's an okay spot to take him. It's not like you're reaching or anything. So I think he's worth a shot. What do you think about Khalil Shakir in fantasy, Jacob?
Yeah, I like his skill set, so I have no qualms about taking him in that range of the draft. If you really like him, you can go 10th round, I would say. I wouldn't go earlier than that, though, because I think Keon Coleman's probably going to end up being the top target there because of his size and red zone capabilities. And I could see Buffalo running a lot of 2 tight end personnel this year, too, with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. So if that's the case, then Shakir might not be on the field as much as we think. I hate that I'm about to say this, but if they go with the bigger personnel, you might end up seeing Mac Hollins on the field more than you want to see him because he was the number 2 receiver in Atlanta last year at times just because of his size, and I think he's a good blocker, which is an important skill to have. But, I don't dislike Shakir, but I think you got to draft him as one of those guys that you say, all right, I'll keep him on my bench for a couple weeks, and if it doesn't look like he's involved, I'm just going to get rid of him. Like, don't have like one of those long shelf lives where you're like, no, he's breaking out, and then keep him 6 weeks, and then it'd be like, guys, he's barely playing. So that's my word of caution on Khalil Shakir, but I do like his skill set enough.
What about the reports that say Chase Claypool is looking like a great player in OTAs?
I mean, if we had a nickel for every time Chase Claypool won the offseason, we'd have like 25 cents, which doesn't sound like a lot, but he's been in the league for 4 or 5 years. So, I'm not buying into that one either.
The funniest report, I posted this on Twitter. There's like a report from Carolina saying like Ian Thomas is stealing the spotlight. I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, the summer needs to end. We need to get to some actual games here. No one draft Ian Thomas, please.
Has Ian Thomas been in the league for like 5 years? Does he have more than 20 total catches? Like that's what's going through my head when I hear that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that the only thing I'm taking away from this is like Jatavian Sanders isn't doing much. Like that's my only conclusion from this. Like I was like if I'm in a 20 or 32 person league and there are 20 roster spots, like I don't know if I'm even drafting Ian Thomas. Like we'll have to ask Ben Wassley because he's in a 32 team league. If he would ever draft Ian Thomas, but I don't know. I can't. I couldn't bring myself to do that. Like no matter what this ESPN report says.
You want to know who's currently the 5th string tight end for the Panthers, and this just blows my mind.
Who is it?
It's Jordan Matthews, the former Eagles wide receiver.
Okay. Wow, that's wild. I didn't think he was still in the NFL. That's crazy.
I had no idea, but apparently he has never left. He has just been kicking around, and now is a tight end. That's wild. He is he's barely registered on my radar, I think, since Ian Thomas was drafted.
Yeah, I think if you extend the summer by one more month, I think we're going to get Jordan Matthews steals the spotlight from Ian Thomas in Panthers training camp. I think we've had enough. So it says, looking at the schedule, Titans could start 0-7, but maybe 5-2 against the spread. I quickly glanced at the schedule, and he said he's detailed 7 games because their 8th game is against the Patriots at home. So at Chicago, is that a win or a loss?
At Chicago,
yeah,
they could win that one, but let's just say the Bears pull it out and the Titans cover.
Okay, 0-1, 1-0. At home versus the Jets.
Versus the Jets, if the Jets are healthy, they probably lose that one.
I think if the Jets beat the Niners, I think that Tennessee could win this game because I think the Jets have a Thursday game coming up after this. And so if they win at San Francisco on Monday night, and then they had this like long travel back on a short week, I think that could trip them up. But I think if they lose to San Francisco, I think they're going to beat the Titans. So I think it depends on what happens week 1. But let's say they're 0-2 versus the Packers in week 3 at home.
Versus the Packers, yeah, they probably lose to the Packers. If Jordan Love plays how I expect him to, they should lose to the Packers.
Okay, week 4 at the Dolphins. It's a night game, so no Miami Heat there.
Oh, okay, that gives the Titans a chance, but I think the Dolphins probably have the offensive firepower needed to outscore them.
Yeah, I think the Miami may remember that Monday night game last year, so they won't be caught off guard again probably. Week 5, actually they have a bye. Week 6 against the Colts at home.
Colts at home. I feel like they could beat the Colts. I feel like I'm saying that they could beat all of these teams.
Right.
I would think they'll lose to the Colts if Anthony Richardson is playing. I'm not sure. Actually, the Titans tend to play the Colts pretty well, right? Or is it the other way around? I can never remember this.
They tend to play well in Indianapolis, and Indianapolis tends to win in Tennessee. So I don't know why. It's a road-dominated series. I don't know why.
Okay, that's weird. We'll give it to the Colts then, since they're the road team. That feels weird.
Yeah, it does. Maybe Titans off a bye. That helps them, but it's a new coach. Week 7 at Buffalo.
Okay, that's a loss. I feel pretty confident about that one. So in the future, if they do lose this one, we can come back to this and laugh.
All right, and then week 8 at Detroit.
At Detroit, I think Detroit will handle them. I don't see Dan Campbell getting tripped up by teams like I don't see him getting tripped up by the Titans.
You agree. So it's a tough schedule. So we were talking 0-7 as well. After that, though, they get the Patriots at home. They play at the Chargers, which is not a home field advantage for the Chargers at all. Then they play against Minnesota at home. They play at the Texans, which is a tough one. But then they play Washington in Washington. So the schedule gets much easier after that. But it's really difficult to start. So, they could be in a hole to begin the season. Lefty says, Titans, let's get old in the offseason plan. So I agree with this. I like the additions they made to be competitive, but I just don't get, like, they should be a rebuilding team. Like, I don't know why they went after all these veterans, especially Tony Pollard. Like, it feels like a team that overspends on a running back should be a team that's like, all right, this is a luxury piece we need to win the Super Bowl. Like Eagles with Saquon Barkley. Like, that made a ton of sense because they have a stacked roster. The defense got better. Their offense was explosive last year. They just didn't have a running back. They had Swift last year, but he's okay. And they're like, okay, let's get Barkley. Let's have him put us over the top and win. Like, those are the teams that should go after these high press running backs, like not Tennessee. And so like why would they sign all these guys, all these veterans, just to finish potentially 8-9? Like, that's probably their ceiling. Like, I don't know. I was very, very confusing. Like, I agree that like the front office did a good job in acquiring talent. I just think it was like the wrong time to get this talent. So it's a strange offseason.
I think their goal in acquiring that talent was to say, all right, we now have put Will Levis in a position where he should be able to succeed. And if he doesn't, we know we need a new quarterback. But I definitely question whether they should have just said, prove it yourself, see what you can do, and just continue to add the young talent to the offense and just, been like, Tyjae Spears is good enough. If you can't get by with Tyjae Spears at running back, you're probably not an NFL caliber starter. So I do get why they did what they did to an extent, but yeah, it's not a situation where you're like, oh, I love what they've done in terms of long-term planning.
Mm-hmm. So we have a disagreement here. Lefty says the Bills receiving core looks crazy like Kansas City's last year. Shakira 70% success rate according to PFR. Is that Pro Football Reference, I guess? And then John says Shakir was a 5th rounder for a reason. I don't assess much. Alligator arms. And then Lefty says who do they have? Plus he has talent. Like that. Yeah, who else do they have? But I don't know. I feel like Shakir could be decent. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on him. And then John says, go ahead.
I was going to agree with John here about Curtis Samuel because I like Curtis Samuel a lot. I've always liked him. I think he's just a rock solid number 2 type receiver or slot receiver / backfield weapon. Like, he can do a lot. So I think he's ahead of Shakir in my mind. Keon Coleman's ahead too, just because of his red zone potential. So I think Shakir is probably the number 3 receiver there, which is not anything bad because you have Josh Allen there, but I don't know that it's a guarantee that he's going to succeed. It's not a guarantee that any of the Buffalo receivers succeed. So that might just be a situation I try to avoid.
Yeah, I agree. I think taking like shots in the late rounds is fine. I just wouldn't go early. But yeah, I like Samuel. He knows the offense. I think that's a big deal. Pat says now apparently Claypool's the top 5 receiver.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Lefty says Colts are gonna be tough out if they are healthy. Total wild card in the AFC. I completely agree. I love their chances as long as Richardson stays healthy. Even if it's Flacco, I think they can make the playoffs. But if Richardson gives them a chance to go the distance, Matthias says so. Titans win. Jets win, Titans win. Jacob, Jordan Love is a bum. Dolphins win, Colts win, Buffalo wins, Titan wins. Do 3-4 for me and 3-0 against the NFC North.
If Jordan Love is a bum, I really just shudder at what you think of Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy combined in Minnesota. You must be apoplectic about that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, he has the Titans winning in Detroit. That's gonna be a tough ask. I don't know. Maybe it's a game where the Lions are not focused for whatever reason. I don't know their schedule offhand, but I don't know. 3-4 is pretty rough. I could see them winning 2 of those games. Like I said, if the Jets are distracted after the win in San Francisco, I think they can win that. And then maybe they catch another team off guard. I think 2-5 is realistic, but 3-4 is tough. Go ahead.
The most winnable of those NFC North games is against the Bears, I think, in week 1, because that's going to be Caleb Williams' first start, and we just don't know how that offense is going to look. So I could see there being growing pains there and Brian Callahan doing better.
I agree with that. Sue helping us out here. Lions play Packers after the Titans. So, yeah, maybe the Lions are distracted and just not really taking the Titans seriously. We've seen the Lions do that last year. Remember against Chicago, they lost. They almost lost the first time, and then they lost the second time. Didn't feel like they gave it their all against Chicago. It's kind of like the middle of the season, like they just weren't really focused. So, I mean, this is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. I doubt they're really going to game plan 100% against Tennessee, So I think at the very least, the Titans are going to keep that game close. especially if they get blown out at Buffalo the previous week. And then Samuel always hurt. Yeah, I mean that's true. But when he stays healthy, I think he's going to do well. It's always hurt. Samuel missed one game in the last 2 years. It felt like he was hurt earlier in his career. But I guess he's done better recently with that in that regard. But I do remember him getting banged up earlier in his career. All right, so we have one more comment. Paris says for Buffalo receivers, your sleeper should be Keon Coleman, at least in redraft. You get a huge discount on him compared to Harrison and Neighbors as a rookie, and he is the best quarterback. So Keon Coleman's ADP is 114 overall. That would make him at 10-6, round 10, pick 6, which is I think it seems reasonable. I would take a shot on him, I guess, at that spot. Do you like Keon Coleman better at 10-6 or Shakira in the 11th round?
I like Keon Coleman. I just think his size makes him, because he's going to have that contested catch ability, even if he doesn't have the separation ability right away. So I like that idea of having him. And I think my favorite Bills weapon is Dalton Kincaid. I think that he could have a massive season. He was great last year as it was. So if I'm getting him at a discount to the other top tight ends, like I had Sam Laporta in most leagues last year, and he was great, but now he's going as like a top 2 tight end off the board. If I can get Dalton Kincaid as one of the middle tight ends selected, I'd be pretty happy about that. But I'd rock with Coleman in that 10th round range. I think he could be the guy that explodes from this offense.
Yeah, I think Kincaid is going to have a monster year as well. Unfortunately, his ADP is 505. Which is
that's too early.
Too early for a tight end. Even one could have a great year. Sam Laporta's ADP, by the way, 210. Talk about early for a tight end. That's crazy. I don't know. There's so many good tight ends out there. I love those 2 guys, but just we can get one later. I don't know. Love T says Coleman can't separate and he is slow AF.
I could actually refute this. Keon Coleman at the gauntlet drill at the combine ran one of the fastest times throughout that. It's not a timed drill, but he was able to catch the balls while going like 20 miles an hour, which historically has been a good marker for success. Comparatively, Puka Nacua was one of the fastest in the gauntlet the previous year, and the knock on him was that he was too slow to separate, and he just had the best rookie receiver season ever. Not saying that Coleman will do that, but it's not just straight line speed we're looking at. It's also speed with the ability to catch.
I think there were like a billion receivers going from like 28 to 30 something. I feel like one of these is going to have like a huge season. It could be Coleman. Let's see here. Love T says if Watson can stay healthy, Browns are legit. That is a stacked roster, maybe the best in the NFL. Well, they had the best defense in the NFL last year. Fortunately, Nick Chubb is coming off that horrible knee injury. If they had Chubb healthy, I think I'd be way more bullish on them. I still like them too. We'll see what happens with Watson. They need him to play like he did in 2020 and not like he's done recently. But yeah, health wise too. And then Sue asking if Kincaid's going to have a monster season to John, and John says no. Brady has a poor history with Carolina with tight ends. I mean, I like Kincaid's much better than what he had in Carolina though. So I don't know. I feel like Kincaid's going to have a great year. So we'll see about that. The odds in this division, we have the Texans plus 105, Jaguars plus 270, Colts plus 330, Titans 8-1. For me, I would take one of Jacksonville or Indianapolis. Now, I think the Texans are going to win the division. However, the Jaguars and Colts, I think they both have a good chance to win it. I think they're both good plays. I think the Colts at plus 330 are a little bit better than the Jaguars at plus 270. But like if you flip those numbers, I would say the Jaguars were the better play. So it's just a value thing for me with the Colts at plus 330. So I might do that. And if the Texans slip up earlier in the year and suddenly like one of these other teams is the favorite, like you could take the Texans at plus like 200 or something, and then you could have a situation where you're going to win no matter what with one of those two teams. So I think you just pick either Jaguars or Colts, whichever you like more, and just go with it. Would you bet any of these to win the division?
Yeah, I would do the same thing as you. I'd pick one of those two teams. My case for the Jaguars is they're probably safer than the Colts because Trevor Lawrence does not have a checkered injury history. I know he got hurt last year, but if you just say Trevor Lawrence is going to play the whole season, I think that you're going to feel pretty good about the Jaguars' chances of competing for the division title. I think the case for the Colts is they have such a high ceiling, but they're just not as safe as the Jaguars because of the Anthony Richardson factor. Like, he could be elite. He could challenge for MVP if he stays healthy and can still continuously run the ball and throw downfield like we saw him do last year. But if he's getting hurt and missing more than just a handful of games, I think that the Colts may have more trouble winning the division. So I might go with the Jaguars, even though the value is slightly lessened. But I also do like the idea of just betting the Colts and then seeing if the other numbers on those top two teams improve, and then you're making money no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Love T says, OMG, they went to the playoffs with the 50-year-old Joe Flacco for F's sake. Yeah, that's definitely true. Although Flacco played better than Watson did last year, so you have to keep that in mind. Watson needs to improve. Now, if Watson plays like he did last year, I still think the Browns have a chance to make the playoffs, just given how great their defense is. But for them to make any noise in the playoffs, they need Watson to revert to 2020 form. And then John says, honestly, like the Texans, I usually hate betting divisional favorites. I think that there's a chance you might get a better number, though. Like, I would not bet them now. I feel like there's no reason to do this. So, like, they play. I think they play at Indianapolis in Week 1. Like, that's a tough game. They could easily lose that game. It's a rematch from Week 18 last year, and the Colts, they may have won that game if they didn't run that stupid fourth down play. And now they're going to have Anthony Richardson. I think if the Colts win that game, the Texans they're going to be much higher than plus 105. So I agree that I think betting the Texans to win the division could be good. I'll just wait on it right now. Yeah,
I think that's the smart play in my opinion, but I don't disagree with you, John. I think the Texans are the most likely team to win the division. I think you can get a better number possibly.
Yeah. So to win the Super Bowl, you have the Texans are 16-1. You have the Jaguars at 45-1, Colts 55-1, and then the Titans 150-1. As mentioned, I like the Jaguars and Colts here, especially the Colts 55-1. Again, if you were to flip these and the Jaguars are 55-1, I think I'd like them better. So I think they're both good values. Texans is 16-1. You're not getting a really good number. And again, if the Texans falter in Week 1 against the Colts or something, like, you might get a 20-1 or something. So that's something to look out for. I think that would be a good strategy. So right now, the only team I bet here right now is one of Jacksonville and Colts, or Colts, and I think I like the Colts a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I would bet the Colts too. They're my top. You're looking for value at this point. Value shopping. I think the Colts can make the playoffs, and if you're getting a 55-1 in the playoffs, all it takes is the team to get hot at the right time. And I just think that they're a deep, talented roster with a high ceiling and a good young coach. So I like them a lot. I don't have any issues with the Jaguars number either. And I think you can maybe get a better number on the Texans, but I also, if you love the Texans and really want to bet them at 16-1, I don't hate that either, because I think that if they take the next step forward on offense, I think they could be a tough team to beat. And they made it to the Final Four in the AFC last year. They could get to the AFC Championship game. It may depend on their draw, but I don't hate it. I'm not betting it yet, but I would consider it at least.
Yeah, value betting these changing lines during the season is something we're going to do more during the year. It's going to do some changes to how we operate. Recaps are going to be a little shorter, just because I kind of had the realization I'm spending too much time at recaps. I think they're important, but if I you should spend a half an hour in each one. If there's 16 games, that's 8 hours during the week. It's a full work day on the recaps, which it's a page that gets okay traffic, but not crazy amounts. So I'm still going to do them, just going to be shorter, but I'm going to dedicate the time I save to looking more at these lines and stuff like that, and posting plays during the season. So we're going to have weekly updates in that regard. So I'm going to keep an eye out on the Texans to see if that number improves throughout the year. All right. The lesser of these divisions, the worst division in the NFL last year, and I'm sure the worst division in the NFL this year. You have the NFC South. The Falcons are minus 115. The Buccaneers, who won the division last year, plus 290. Saints are plus 350. The Panthers are 11-1. So Falcons are considered the favorites to win. Do you agree with that, or do you think who do you think is going to win this division?
I think it's going to be the Falcons. I don't have a good reason to back any of the other teams in the division to make make a run at a title. And I just think the presence of Kirk Cousins should help them hypothetically get that offense on track. They have a really strong offensive line and what should be an elite rushing offense now that Arthur Smith is gone, and they will actually use Bijan Robinson appropriately as the full-time lead back, which inexplicably took Arthur Smith more than half the season to figure out that was a good idea last year. I get wanting to ease a rookie in, but you don't have to wait the whole season if you're not winning games. You gotta feed the beast. So I just think that the coaching staff's better positioned to take advantage of Bijan Robinson. I think Kirk Cousins will allow you to better distribute the ball to Drake London and Kyle Pitts too. They've added some other tertiary weapons in Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore. So I think the offense is looking pretty good. The defense still has some question marks. I think their secondary is pretty solid with Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell being the stars back there. I liked how Clark Phillips played last year. I don't know how he graded out exactly, but I was impressed with him. Pass rush, big question mark. Feels like that's been the case since Jonathan Abraham retired. So we'll see what they can do in that front seven situation there. But I think the defense will hold up well enough that the offense can win out in this division. I will say that I'm not like super high on this team in general. I have them going 10-7. And it's not like a 10-7 where I'm like, yes, this team is great. It's more of a, hey, I just don't think that the other teams in this division are going to compete. So the Falcons should go 5-1 or 6-0 against them. Like that's how I see this kind of shaking out. And if they can pick up a few other wins outside the division, great. That's all they need to win it. So I have them at 10-7, but I could see the case for making them have less. I know they're going to be getting a lot of attention as like a great team to back. And I think they're going to be good, but I don't know that Kirk Cousins coming off a torn Achilles is going to be the massive type of upgrade that people might initially assume. I think it's definitely an upgrade over Desmond Ridder, but I think Cousins is going to start a little slower than people anticipate as he works his way back into health.
Yeah, so the good news is that we agree that the Falcons are going into the division. The bad news is this is tied for our biggest disagreement for wins. I have the Falcons going 7-10. 7-10 and winning the division. That's how bad this NFC South is. I get the upside. Like if Kirk Cousins plays well like he did last year, he was having his best season. And then he tore his Achilles. Now he's in his mid to late 30s, coming off a torn Achilles. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but there might be a reason why they drafted Michael Penix Jr. Beyond having a contingency plan. Like if they saw Cousins throw and they're like, oh man, this guy is not 100%. Then it makes sense to draft Michael Penix because they might deem Cousins to be a sunk cost at that point. And if that's true, then they're really going to struggle, kind of like they did with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke last year. Now, like Cousins should still be an upgrade. Like I can't imagine him being worse. But if he's not 100% or close to it coming off the torn Achilles, then I just wonder how much of an upgrade that will be. I don't expect him to fumble into the end zone a billion times, but still, if he's struggling, then this whole team's going to not do nearly as well. Like they signed Darnell Mooney, like that was their big offensive signing aside from Cousins. I don't know about that. It was just a weird move. People expect Drake London to have a great year. I'm not quite sure about that either. They lost Calais Campbell. I think that's a huge departure. He was so good for them last year, and now he's gone. And who knows? Maybe like Ruko Rororo, the guy they drafted with their second pick, like maybe he's going to be good. But I really have trouble seeing him being as good as Calais Campbell right away. They still have issues with their pass rush, I think, given that they had a chance to draft Laius Hulatu and they didn't. Just feels like they have like 1 foot in this year to compete for a Super Bowl because they signed Cousins to his big deal and then they signed Moody to a big contract. And then it feels like their other foot is out because they drafted Penix for the future. I really dislike their offseason. It looks promising when they signed Cousins, but then it's like, they signed Mooney to a big deal and then they drafted Penix and then they didn't address the pass rush. They lost Campbell. Like outside of Cousins, it's a pretty bleak offseason that they had. And if Cousins is not nearly as good as people think he's going to be because coming off the Achilles, then he could struggle. Like, I don't think it's a lock for them to win the division, even though they're overwhelming favorites here. So yeah, I have them 7-10, just winning the division by default because all the other teams are terrible.
Yeah, I could see it being that kind of a season for them. I'll agree with you on this aspect of the Falcons offseason. I don't know why they signed Cousins and drafted Penix. I love Michael Penix Jr., the player, and I thought among the teams he could have landed with, I thought the Falcons were his best fit for him personally, because I think going to a team with a very strong offensive line that already has a lot of good weapons and good and proven weapons in place, I was sold on his fit there. But the fact that they signed Cousins to a 4-year deal, even if they had signed Cousins for a 1-year deal, that they just said, we need to see how you are coming off the Achilles and we're drafting a quarterback, that would have made more sense. But going long-term with both of them was certainly strange. I didn't quite understand that. And I could definitely see their defense holding them back. And Cousins, if he's not fully healthy early in the season, the Falcons could struggle more than people think. But yeah, they're still the best team in the division. That just says everything you need to know about the NFC South.
Yeah, it's a horrible division. I think it's gonna be closer though. I just not very bullish on the Falcons. You know, if they retain Campbell, I would like him more. But you know, I think losing him is going to be a huge deal. And then we'll see what they get out of Cousins. Like he could be pretty bad. We just don't know at this point. Matthias says Saints plus 350 means they're 350 million over the cap next year, which sounds pretty accurate to me. I think it's a good one. John says Anthony Richardson is 2 years younger than Michael Penix. Great pick, Falcons. Yeah, it's a bad situation for Penix. Like they're making him sit, you know, unless they think Cousins is sunk cost and they're going to start Penix right away. Like they're making a 24-year-old sit just doesn't make any sense at all. It just I don't know. I felt like Penix would go to a team like the Raiders, who would potentially start him right away. Like that would have been a great fit. Whereas like this is like, yeah, he's going to sit and he's going to be like 27 when it takes over. It's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah. Sue says NFC South is so mediocre. I'm taking a flyer on the Panthers winning the division with Canales Magic at double-digit odds. I don't think we'll talk about the Panthers in a bit. I don't think that's the worst idea. But yeah, we'll discuss it later. T says, by the way, sorry I paused, but Puka Nacua benefit from McVay, ran very tight trips bunch that got slots open. Does Buffalo have the same OC? I think that like we see Curtis Samuel produce well with Joe Brady in the past, so I think that like should be encouraging at least, you know. And then Love T says ATL is going to win this division, so. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they are the overwhelming favorites, as I pointed out, for a reason. But I think the reason is because the other three teams are horrible, not because the Falcons are good. So if the Falcons don't win this division, if Cousins sucks, if the defense is horrible without Campbell, no pass rush, who do you think is going to take this division between Tampa, New Orleans, and Carolina?
I have the Buccaneers penciled in second place, and I don't love this. It could be any of the three. I think I have the Buccaneers at 8 and 9, and I think that's too many wins. I really do. I don't know how they got to 8 wins. I just don't. And that's the beauty of doing a week by week playoff prediction, and you don't see what's happened unless you pay really close attention. I just look at the records at the end. I'm like, oh, that's surprisingly high for what I anticipated. This team has some good things about it. I like the Graham Barton draft pick. They still have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on offense. Their defense still has some strong parts to it. They got Jordan Whitehead back too. He was really good for them. So I think that the defense should keep them competitive sometimes. The question mark is, how is Baker Mayfield going to do without Dave Canales? Dave Canales made massive improvements to Mayfield's game last season. And that really allowed the Buccaneers to go on their playoff run and beat the Eagles and do everything that they needed to do to kind of set the franchise on the right track. Then the Panthers just swooped in and hired him in a move that I think should, if that doesn't help Bryce Young, then nothing will. And now we're looking at Liam Cohen taking over for Dave Canales there, and nothing against Liam Cohen, but he just isn't Dave Canales, so we just don't know how Baker Mayfield's going to look. If he continues to be the same guy that he was last season, I think the Buccaneers could challenge the Falcons for this division because they have a solid roster otherwise. But if Mayfield takes a step back and goes back to the turnover-prone guy we saw in all but one of those years in Cleveland and when he bounced around the NFL, that's going to be a problem for the Buccaneers. And they don't have another quarterback on the roster that's going to be able to help them overcome that, because Kyle Trask, John Wolford, I don't know who Zach Anixtad is. He's from Illinois State. He's their fourth stringer, probably just a camp arm, undrafted rookie. But, I mean, I just don't see the upside at quarterback if Baker Mayfield can't at least stay level with what he was last year. And given the fact that we saw Geno Smith perform at a Pro Bowl level under Dave Canales, he left last year, and with Shane Waldron, I think that Geno Smith still did okay, but he wasn't at that same high level when Canales was his quarterback's coach. So I think that speaks to the impact that Canales had. So I'm definitely worried about Mayfield. So 8-9 seems like the best case scenario for them, probably, unless Mayfield continues to improve, which I'm just not sure will happen.
Yeah, I don't see it at all. I'm very bearish here on the Buccaneers. Like, you have them at 8-9. I have them at 5-12. I think the team could bottom out this year. Canales being gone is one element of it. I think Baker Mayfield is going to take a big step backward. Mike Evans is now 31. Like, he's going to decline soon. Like I said, 31 is like the magic number for receivers. Now, doesn't mean he's going to decline. Just like the odds of him regressing are going to rise exponentially like each year. And then the offensive line, the interior of it, the tackles are great. The interior is really suspect. The defense has gotten worse. I mean, when the defense, when the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, in 2020, everyone praised Tom Brady, and for good reason, but Tampa was 6th in yards allowed that year. Last year they were 23rd, and they lucked out with so many fluky wins. They played the Falcons, who had so many turnovers. In week 1, Minnesota imploded in the red zone a few times. Like, Cousins had his worst game. In week 2, you have Fields, that one play at the end. He had that turnover that turned to a touchdown. It just feels like the Buccaneers lucked out in so many games last year. And I think that the variance is going to tip. And I don't think the defense has gotten better, really. And in fact, it could be worse. They lost Devin White, which is it's a huge deal. It is a big playmaker in the middle of the defense. The secondary was horrible last year, and they lost Carlton Davis. Granted, Davis wasn't good last year, but still, whoever is going to replace him is probably going to be worse. They get Jordan Whitehead back, which is nice, but they also lost Shaq Barrett. Some of their younger players that they drafted recently, like Logan Hall and Kalijah Kancey, they have not done anything. They have not shown any positive signs of being good players. So I think this team is just on a huge decline right now. The only reason they made the playoffs last year is because they had so many fluky wins, and it's such an easy schedule. And the schedule is going to be tougher this year. They don't get to play the AFC South again. Granted, the AFC South was better than we expected last year, but still, it's definitely easier than what they have this year. They have to take on the AFC West instead, so they have to go against the Chiefs and Chargers, Raiders. The Broncos are going to be an easy game, but still, it's a tougher schedule overall, and they get a first place schedule, so they have to take on the Cowboys and the Lions and the Niners. So and plus the other team from the AFC South, from the AFC that finished first place. I'm not sure which division that is, but so it's going to be a much different difficult schedule for the Buccaneers. So I think they're really going to decline here, and I think 5-12 around there is probably where they're going to finish.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I think the pass rushing losses are what's lost on people. Like Shaq Barrett, I know he's not the same player he was during their Super Bowl winning season, and he was injured too at times, but he meant a lot to that pass rush. And now they're going to be asking Yaya Diaby, who I like, and Chris Braswell, a rookie, to step into bigger roles, with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka not really showing much consistency there. So, yeah, this team has the potential to bottom out, and I think that 8-9 is their best case scenario. Like I said, I don't know how they got to that many wins in my first projection. That's why these are my first projections and not my last projections of this offseason. But there's definitely, this team has the potential to take a big step back.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. We have some comments here. Lefty says no quarterback has ever had success at 28. There's a bad track record of older quarterbacks being drafted. Brandon Weeden, as John says, drafted at 28. Quarterbacks who get a late start as rookies, they generally don't have much upside. But yeah, I do that. I do like Penix. Like I think he's gonna be good. I just think it was a bad situation for him to be in. Like if they're going to draft a quarterback, this should have been like a raw prospect. Which, again, I think this 2024 quarterback class is pretty bad. So like they could have waited a year to get their contingency plan. I don't know why they took Penix, unless, like I said, unless they saw Cousins throw and they're like, oh, this guy sucks. So. John says, is it scheme with Canales that Mayfield will miss? It's not like Mayfield forgot what he taught him. I mean, it's everything. Like the coaching makes such a big difference. I mean, look at Geno Smith last year. He lost Canales last year from 2022 to 2023, and he had the decline. Greg Olson, one of the legendary quarterbacks coaches and offense coordinators, he got Josh Freeman to a Pro Bowl. And then when Freeman lost Greg Olson, he declined. Blake Bortles that 1 year in 2014, he had amazing stats. And then Olson left the following year, and then we saw what happened with him. You can go on and on of these coaches who get the most out of quarterbacks, and then once they lose once the quarterbacks lose their coaches, like they suffer a regression. That's just natural part of it. So yeah, it's a lot of game planning, a lot of scheming, and I mean, if you lose your coach, like he's not there to see your mistakes, like that. I mean, that's a big deal. So losing Canales is going to have a huge impact on Mayfield.
Yeah, it's the ability to correct mistakes and diagnose weaknesses in an opponent that are the two missed things, because all it takes, especially in football, and this is true in baseball too, for pitchers, for quarterbacks and pitchers, all it takes is one tiny little thing to be off in your mechanics, whether it's your footwork, your arm angle, your release point. That's all it takes for you to be off to the point that you're throwing 4 picks in a game. And some coaches will be able to spot that quicker than others. Some coaches will be able to just tinker with things to kind of adjust to that. And some coaches too are just better at, scheming up against opposing defenses. So it's a combination of everything. And again, that's not to say Liam Cohen's necessarily going to be bad at this. It's just we know Dave Canales was great, and Liam Cohen is much more of an unknown in this circumstance, especially since he hasn't really worked much with Baker.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe Cohen's going to be a great coordinator, but I don't know. I have my doubts. John says Bucks look decent in the playoffs, though. Was it the Bucks looking decent or the Eagles looking awful? The Eagles, they lost they lost to Drew Lock, and then they lost to Kyler Murray at home. Like this team was just leaking gas. It was a disaster for the Eagles to close out the year. Like they had so many issues defensively. They had locker room problems. AJ Brown was injured. Like the Eagles would have gotten blown out by anyone. So. I wouldn't put much stock or any stock into that result. I think you actually have to ignore it totally.
Yeah, no, I firmly agree with that. We kind of knew that was possible. We might have even bet the money line in that game. I can't remember exactly, but I think I sprinkled on the money line for that.
I did not. So congrats on that pick. It was a very easy one. For you. Sue says, sounds like Walt has 2023 Bucks mirroring the 2022 Vikings. Yeah, I think that that Vikings team for 2022 was a major fraud. Like they had so many fluky wins. I think they got outscored for the season, right? Didn't they? It was like they were a very obvious regression candidate, and the Bucks are the same way. Like they were so lucky last year. Like the variance stick, they're going to be on the other end of the variance stick for sure. Love T says, I'm all in on Penix. Then he says, Kurt Warner, 28 for a start. Well, I mean, Kurt Warner was drafted at 22. Like he was around the NFL for a while, and then he was out of the NFL, and then he was not CFP, he was in Arena League, right? And then he kept working hard. So it's not like he entered the league super old. Like he was in the league earlier. Like I think he was drafted by the Packers. So he was like on a roster with Brett Favre and Mark Brunell. The Packers roster was just loaded, so he just didn't have a chance to make the team. But it's a different circumstance, though. And I'm not saying Penix is going to be bad. Like don't get me wrong. I like Penix. I just think that I'm just telling you, like, there's a really bad history of older quarterbacks being drafted and doing well. But I think Penix could be the exception to that rule. You had to go back 25 years. Yeah. Love T says Falcons 12-5. So I think even though I have been 7-10, I don't think 12-5 is unreasonable because they play in a horrible division. They don't have a first place schedule. If Cousins can be 100%, if Cousins can play like he did last year before he got hurt, then I do think 12-5 is within reach. But I just really question if Cousins can be healthy. I worry about the defense, Campbell gone. Like, I think there are a lot of issues with this team. So I think 7-10 is more realistic. But they go 9. I think 9-8 is definitely realistic as well. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think they win the division. The ways they can do it is a wide variety of outcomes between 7 and 12 wins.
Yeah. And Matthias says, Minnesota lost QB and had some fluky 34 turnovers. Yeah, it was so the fluky thing that's what I'm talking about exactly. Like, they lucked out. Minnesota in 2022 lucked out in so many games that, like, in 2023 it was like all the luck they had went against them, and like that's why they were losing. It was just bound to happen. Like, it was just natural regression to the mean, and I think Tampa's due for the same thing. John says, I was thinking more about keeping it close in the division round against the Lions. Yeah, I mean, the Buccaneers, they showed well against the Lions. Like, they were hanging around for a while. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. But I would definitely not take anything away from the Eagles game. But I mean, you're right about that. Who Hames says 2022, didn't the Vikings have all the variants in their favor? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they had so many fluky wins for sure.
The Dolphins gained like 86, or what was it, like 120 yards on one drive against them, and then punted. How did that happen?
I was so tilted from that game. I had the Dolphins plus 3.5 or plus 3. I can't remember. They even had a chance to cover at the end, and Jalen Waddle fumbled. I think Minnesota outgained them by like 1 billion yards in that game. It's like unbelievable, like lopsided yardage in that game. I don't know if I have that. I do have the Excel sheet. I'm going to bring it up. So while I do, which team do you think is going to finish third? I'm going to look this up.
I don't feel good about this, but the Saints are finishing third in mine. I have them at 5-12, and I think this is the year the bottom finally falls out for the Saints. I've been predicting that they're going to fall flat on their face for years. Every offseason they try to circumvent the salary cap. They've just been kind of trying to pump life into this team since Drew Brees' retirement. And yeah, they've stayed at least competitive, I guess, but they're nowhere near a contender anymore, and they need to just kind of pull the plug. And I think this year is going to make them finally reset the cap and rebuild the team. I mean, there's enough that you could say, oh, yeah, they're going to beat some of these weaker teams. Like, Derek Carr has some good games. He's probably, as weird as it sounds, like, depending on your view of Baker Mayfield, he might be the second best quarterback in this division. It sounds weird to say, but he has Chris Olave at his disposal. The offensive line is solid. It's not great like it once was. They've lost some pieces up front. I think Talise Fuaga is going to be a nice upgrade for them. That I really like the fit with that pick. But I don't know that he can kind of save what this offense needs, which is another big-time playmaker and probably a quarterback who's better than Derek Carr. And defensively, they've just been having a slow drip of talent leave on this side of the ball. And they've invested in replacements. Like this offseason, they signed Chase Young. They signed Willie Gay. And that should hypothetically add some young athletic talent to the defense. But problem is Chase Young hasn't been consistent. And I don't think that he'll be much better in New Orleans unless they can unlock something in him. And I like Willie Gay, but they already had two good linebackers in Demario Davis and Pete Werner. So I don't know how much he raises your ceiling there. The rest of the pass rush rotation isn't great. The secondary is solid with Marshawn Lattimore back there, but there's still some holes at safety. And I see too many holes with this team to back them as a consistent winner. And I just think that the bottom's going to fall out for them. I think they can compete with teams in their division, but outside of it, I just don't think that this team has enough playmakers. I don't think their blocking's as good as it once was. Their pass rush isn't as good as it once was. So, you look at their linebackers and you say, man, that's a really good unit. And then the rest of the team, you're just kind of like, oh, man, this isn't that impressive. So that's my feeling on the Saints. I've been kind of saying this for years, and they keep getting to 7 or 8 wins. This year, I think it's going to be the 5 or 6 wins.
Yeah, before I get to the Saints, but I looked it up. Vikings won 24-16 at Miami. Miami was plus 3.5. The Dolphins outgained the Vikings in the game 458 to 234. The Dolphins had 6.3 yards per play. The Vikings had 4.7. One of the most misleading results of all time, I think. It was unbelievable how lopsided the game was in favor of the Dolphins, and yet the Vikings still won and covered as 3.5 point road favorites. So it's I think one of the most tilting experiences I had as a bettor, because I had the Dolphins as my pick of the month. I thought it was so obvious that they would win, just win outright. I thought, and they should have. They doubled up the Vikings in yards, and they lost by 8. It's just so so aggravating. Anyway, so now that we relive that nightmare. I get to the Saints here, and I agree with what you said. I have them with one more win. I have them 6-11. You said 5-12, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did say 5-12.
Okay, yeah. So I have them with one more win. This team is. I feel like they could bottom out as well. If they go 4-13, 3-14, wouldn't surprise me at all. They do have some good aspects. You mentioned the linebacking core is outstanding. Alvin Kamara can look good, although he tends to miss like 3 or 4 games per year. I do like Kendry Miller as backup. Chris Olave, dynamic receiver. Rashid Shaheed, decent deep threat. Derek Carr is just okay. Like he's great. No, I shouldn't say great. He's good in between the 20s. He's horrible in the red zone. So he can get Blake Grupe to some field goals here. And they have Marshawn Lattimore, but Marshawn Lattimore tends to get hurt a lot. They have some young defensive linemen. We'll see, like Brian Brisset, like maybe he's going to be good. He wasn't all that good last year. Carl Granderson had 8 sacks, so he's a good player. They signed Chase Young, as you mentioned. It's kind of like their big signing, which is kind of depressing because Chase Young's not that good. It's a shame because all the injuries have kind of sapped his talent away. But yeah, I mean, this team has a lot of holes too. Their offensive line could be a disaster. I'm kind of curious where you're going to have him. Talise Fuaga might be good, but we don't know. He's not a lock to do well. And so if he struggles, like their tackle play could be the worst in the NFL. Trevor Penning is awful. Ryan Ramczyk would be great, but it sounds like he may not play ever again, or at least not this year. So like that is a huge issue. And their guard play was awful last year. They had Cesar Ruiz and they got Oli Udoh to play guard. He was horrible for the Vikings. Their only good lineman, if Fuaga doesn't play well, their only good lineman is their center. I worry about their pass rush. Like Cameron Jordan is a shell of his former self, and I don't think Chase Young is going to be that much of an upgrade. Marshall Lattimore could easily get hurt again. You have Tyrann Mathieu. It was good last year, but now he's 32. Like at some point, he's going to fall off. I hate Dennis Allen as a coach. Like this team has just such downside here. Like I said, some good aspects for sure. And they're not going to be the worst team in the NFL. Like they're going to be competitive against like non-elite teams. But 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 wins. I feel like that's where they're going to finish.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Like every year we've been kind of blowing the whistle of like, don't back the Saints to win the division for years now, just because they've been, again, that slow drip of talent out. This feels like the real year where it's like, guys, the path for them winning the division is almost non-existent. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the offensive line. I'm a big fan of Eric McCoy, and if you told me Ryan Ramczyk was going to play this season, I would say, okay, the right side of your line will be okay. Yeah, we don't know. Cesar Ruiz hasn't been good, but at least you'd be putting him between 2 really strong offensive linemen. And then, Fuaga can play left tackle. All of a sudden you look good. But if Ryan Ramczyk doesn't play, then you just have McCoy. And then you have the disaster scenario of, oh no, what if Fuaga looks like a rookie out of the gate and struggles to protect? So there is a lot of downside up front, and if Derek Carr isn't protected, he will be forced into some mistakes. So this offense, man, it has some nice pieces with Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, and long-term, like I said, I like Talise Fuaga. But this year, it's going to be relying on a lot of individual pieces as opposed to units keeping it together.
Yeah, doesn't look good for the Saints. John with the $5 super chat. Thanks so much, John. You've been on fire with these super chats, so I really appreciate it. He says $5 what the Saints should have paid Derek Carr. Yes. Well, fortunately, league minimums dictate that he would have to pay more. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Derek Carr, like I said, decent between the 20s. Like he can move the team well when he needs to and get the team to the field goal range. But when he gets to the red zone, like I don't know what happens. He turns into like the worst quarterback in the NFL. He's just awful down there. So yeah, Saints not very high on them. John says, God, Chiefs fan, no wonder he has such bad takes. He's talking about love to eat. So it says, Willie Gay was great for us in Kansas City. He will be missed. Yeah, I mean, great linebacking core for sure. But like, how much better is Willie Gay going to make their linebacking core, which is already good, as you mentioned? He says, is that directed towards me? I assume so. Sue says, my guess is Falcons and Panthers are 1-2 in offensive line rankings in the division. I mean, we haven't talked about the Panthers yet, but I would assume so, right? Well, I mean, Buccaneers, they have the two great tackles. Their interior play is questionable, but I don't know how you rank the offensive lines. For me, I would go in the division. I would go Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Bucks. Sorry. Falcons, Panthers, Bucks, Saints. Where would you have them?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Bucks line right now. It's really hard with the Panthers because we just don't know how they're all going to play together. But I think their interior line being rock solid, I think gives them the edge. Like Tristan Wirfs is probably the best offensive lineman on the two teams combined. So you have to consider the Bucks, and I like Graham Barton, but I don't think they're proven enough. Whereas the Panthers have the proven guys. So I think your ranking, Walt, is how I would have it shaking out. With the caveat that, hey, the Panthers don't have any continuity with these guys, so it might not look pretty early on.
Yeah. John says, yes, draft Shakir in the first round. I do like Shakir later on. I wouldn't mind one of these Buffalo receivers later on, but Coleman 10th round, Shakir 11th round. I think that's kind of appropriate for the potential. All right, so we get to the Panthers here. They had a lot of turnover, which is good because their roster has been awful. As we know, their owner, David Axe Tepper, stepped in when the coaches and GM, they all wanted CJ Stroud. In fact, when they made that trade, I got a text. I don't have nearly as many sources as Charlie had, but I do have a couple. And when that trade happened, the source is like, yeah, we love CJ Stroud for the Talking Panthers at Carolina. They're like, yeah, we can't wait to draft him. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put Stroud at number one. And then I get like 5 days later, they're like, the same person's like, yeah, we're taking Bryce Young because the owner wants him. It's like, okay, so everyone wanted CJ Stroud except for the owner. So Bryce Young was horrible last year. There have been some glowing reports about him this offseason. I think I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Adam Thielen was talking about it. He said that he looks much better. It's like night and day. But I don't know. It's the offseason. We just had that Ian Thomas report. So forgive me for not trusting what these media reports are saying. However, they do have Dave Canales. So he should be able to get the most out of Bryce Young. I don't know how much there is to get out of Bryce Young, but Bryce Young should play better, and the supporting cast is going to be better. I mean, the receiving core, they added Deontay Johnson, they added Xavier Legette, and they already have Adam Thielen and Jonathan Mingo. So potentially, I wouldn't say four. I'm not high on Mingo, but essentially like three decent receivers. Their receivers couldn't get any separation last year, and Deontay Johnson should be able to fix that. Then at offensive line, they added Damian Lewis to Robert Hunt. They paid a lot of money for those guys, and I think those two good moves because their interior blocking was probably the worst last year. Now they had great. I would say they had good tackle play with Taylor Moton, Ike Ekwonu, but as I said, their interior blocking was horrible. So Lewis and Hunt should really improve that area. Defensively, they lost Brian Burns, which is a big deal, but they got DJ Wanham, who's got potential. They have some other good players as well defensively. And so the defense, they've lost Frankie Louvu, unfortunately. That's going to be a big loss. They lost Dante Jackson. But like I said, they have some decent players to fill out the defense, and so defense should be like maybe middle of the pack, maybe slightly worse, but the offense should be a lot better this year. We'll see what they get out of Jonathan Brooks. I'm not like very optimistic about him, given that he's coming off the torn ACL in the short term. But if he can contribute late in the year, kind of like Breece Hall did last year for the Jets, that should help them out as well. So, like all that said, I have the Panthers at 4-13, but I think they could finish second in the division. And if they win this horrible division, like if Cousins is awful coming off the torn Achilles, then this division's wide open because all the teams are going to suck. And so the Panthers win the division, like that's not going to be the most shocking thing in the world. Like if someone visited me from the future, like 7 or 8 months from now, and they're like, "Oh, Panthers are going to win the division, bet them at 11-1," I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be like, "That makes sense. I could see it." So I still have them at 4-13, but I do recognize the potential. This team is not going to be the worst team in the NFL this year, like they were last year. Obviously, they're going to be better. They're going to be more competitive. I still think they're a year away. Depending on Bryce Young, maybe they're a few years away. But if Bryce Young could do okay, I think they're a year away from maybe winning the division. What do you think about the Panthers?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. We actually have the exact same record, 4-13. So there we go.
Nice.
I feel similarly strong about their signings and additions on the offensive side of the ball. I think getting Lewis and Hunt on that line is particularly important because the interior pressure for Bryce Young has to impact him more than other quarterbacks solely because of his stature. If he has guys in his face right away, he legitimately cannot see downfield because he's 5'10", and a lot of the linemen in front of him are, a lot bigger than that. So if they're in his field of vision, it's going to be hard for him to see those receivers. So I think that kind of addressing that issue should at least allow him clearer sight lines. And as you said, Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, like these guys should get better separation than their receivers got last year. So I like that defensively. Losing Brian Burns hurts, but they've kind of done one of the things that teams do. They're money balling the defense is what I'll call it. Like I like DJ Wanham. He's not Brian Burns, but he's good. Jadeveon Clowney had a great year in Baltimore last year. We'll see if he's motivated after coming home to the Carolinas. But they've got a lot of role players that should help the pass rush do okay. And they don't need to be great to get to 4 wins, obviously. So I think that they have enough talent on defense that they can stop some of the bleeding against weaker offenses. And if J.C. Horn stays healthy, their secondary doesn't look too bad. Yeah, they lack a true number 2 cornerback, but I think that they still have plenty of guys back there that I'm willing to trust. So there's enough on this team that I'm confident about. Agreeing with you, saying they won't be the worst team in the NFL. But yeah, still a lot of what they need to do to take that next step and compete for the division title. I think they need some more personnel on defense for that to happen. And I don't think Bryce Young is going to be fixed overnight. So interested to see what they do this year. Really interested to see what Dave Canales will do. But I still think that they're probably more likely to be last in the division than first.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they have a wide range of outcomes, but I do think 4th is the most likely spot. But I think there's a decent chance they pass one of these teams. Like the Bucs are saying, it's like one of these teams is going to bottom out, and I think they're going to finish 3rd. But like I said, I have 4th. Yeah, 4th definitely more likely than 1st. LFC says, did I say that? I said sleeper. Didn't say draft them 3rd in your FD. Yeah, and then John says, sorry, Chiefs fans turned me into AFC at a rally. Did the Bills and Chiefs have some sort of history? Not quite sure about that. Sue asking, Panthers still have the red rifle? They do. And their offense looked the best it did last year when Andy Dalton started against Seattle. So we'll see. I do think Canales is going to get the most out of Bryce Young, but there may not be anything there. Would it shock you at all if Andy Dalton replaces Bryce Young, if Bryce Young's benched at some point this year?
It wouldn't. I think if he doesn't make the strides under Dave Canales, I mean, given what we've seen Canales do the last couple of years with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, if Bryce Young really, really struggles and doesn't show any improvement over his rookie year, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets benched at some point. That would be the worst case scenario for the Panthers, who invested so much draft capital in Bryce Young and player talent, and just goodness, they should have taken CJ Stroud if that's who the coaching staff wanted. But meddling owners will destroy their own franchises just to try to prove they're right, and that is just horrible, horrible stuff. So anyway, Yeah, it wouldn't shock me, but I hope for the Panthers' sake that doesn't happen.
It'd be one thing if Axe Tapper had a football background, if he coached earlier and just became a billionaire, or if he had played, this guy made money on bank stocks. Why do you think that he knew more than the football people he hired? It just didn't make any sense to me. I don't know. The coaches were so excited for Stroud, and then it's like their hopes and dreams were crushed. And then Tepper fired everyone who disagreed with him. Kind of reminds me of what Bill O'Brien did. Bill O'Brien, ahead of the 2017 draft, he did not want Deshaun Watson. He wanted Tom Savage to be a starting quarterback. And then the front office, to quote him, betrayed him and drafted Deshaun Watson. And then he fired everyone. Once the GM stepped down, he fired everyone who was responsible for that decision, along with the GM. And then the rest is history with Bill O'Brien. Just kind of like mirrors that, even though one's a coach and one's an owner. That's just like guys who think they know more than they do, and they're morons. So yeah, it's funny. Anyway, it's sad for Carolina though. He said AFC big booty Latina. Yeah, as Alex Stein, shout out. That guy's nuts. He reminds me so much of my friend Knowles. I used to hang out with him all the time. He reminds me so much of him. It's crazy. Cassandra says, why did Carolina turn down that offer for Burns, which is for 2 first-round picks, if I remember correctly, only to turn around this year and trade him? Because the Panthers are a silly organization. That's why. Lefty says Rookie of the Year award for a QB is shaky the next year. You mean this year? Caleb Williams, Jane Daniels. I feel like they're 2 of the favorites. But I mean, the Martin Harrison Jr. Is that what you're referring to? Sue says Panthers and Titans could be ATS darlings. I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think we're going to be betting them quite often to begin the year. Chris says, Jacob, important question. What Disney princesses would you say Walt shares the most common with? 1 personality, 2 physically, 3 taste in princes. I don't know.
I don't know. Man, this is tough. I guess I would go personality-wise. I've never seen you. I only see you in this little box on this screen. So right. I don't think I can judge you physically. So I'm going to go with personality-wise. I'm going to give you Belle from Beauty and the Beast, because Belle really likes reading and doing research, basically, which I feel like is what you do. So you kind of share some of that with her. Yes.
I think so too. I think that's a good one. That's actually what popped into my head. Yeah. Well, thankfully you didn't go with Ariel and think that I wanted to marry some prince on land. But physically, we've never met each other in person, which is crazy because 20 years ago, that would be how would that even happen?
Yeah. How would that be possible?
Right.
It's weird to think about it from that perspective, but yeah,
it's a different world. I hired Charlie. Quick story. I hired Charlie. He called me. We did a phone interview, and I was familiar with his work already. And he emailed me a few times. He's like, "Hey, the Buccaneers are going to draft the Aqib Talib. The Panthers Buccaneers going to draft this guy." And he was right every time. And then he called me for a 2-hour phone interview. We just talked. And then he told me he wanted to work for me, and I was like, this is during the lockout. I'm like, yeah, as soon as the lockout ends, if it ends, I'll hire you. And so he worked for me for 3 years before I met him in person. I met him in 2013. I hired him in 2010. So I met him in 2013. So it's 3 years before I even met the guy, and he'd been working for me for 3 years. So, and then my girlfriend, right before my wife, we met online. She was actually a reader of the website, and she emailed me a few times, and we kept emailing each other, and then we texted, and eventually, she sent me some we did some video chatting. We talked without meeting. We talked for 7 months, and then we met. And then I flew out to Denver to meet her, and then then she became my girlfriend for almost a year. So it's this stuff never would have happened 30 years ago. It's crazy how things have changed. So it's crazy.
Wild.
Yeah, John says usually the way non-QB wins offensive rookie of the year is if it's a Kenny Pickett type QB draft. Yeah, I generally say that's true. It's crazy that Puka Nacua broke the receiving record last year and didn't win it. And you had these two amazing tight ends; they didn't win it. Just because of those rookies, the rookie quarterbacks. Sue says, I think Chris Williams should be asking questions at the upcoming debate. Yeah, exactly. Lati says Sanders, and that is about 50-50 who won that award. Yeah. And then Ariel is the queen. I watched I watched all those old Disney movies in the theater when I was a kid. I went with me and my sister. We went to watch Little Mermaid, then Beauty and the Beast, and then Aladdin, and then Lion King. It was like early 90s. I was like 9 or 10, and she was 6 or 7. So yeah, I remember those movies fondly. And like I just watched them recently because my son has got into them. He says, I mean success the next year, QB. Okay. All right. So the odds for this division: Falcons minus 115, Buccaneers plus 290, Saints plus 350, Panthers 11-1. Sue says, he would consider the Panthers. I actually don't think that's crazy. I think they might be the best bet on the board. Now, if you're really confident in the Falcons, we have varying records. You have them 10-7, I have 7-10. So maybe you like the Falcons more. I'm like 11-1 shot. Give me a chance on the Panthers. If Canales can really get something out of Bryce Young, and the offensive line plays like as good as I think they can, and the defense can survive without Brian Burns, and the receiving core is going to be better as expected. Like this team could win the division if Kirk Cousins slips up and is not 100%. So the Panthers at 11-1 or better, just try to shop around. I think they're the only bet I would make here, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to bet them. I just think they're interesting. What do you think about these odds?
Yeah, I'm not going to touch any of these. I don't like this division. I think the Falcons are probably most likely to win it. I think the odds, if you like them, are probably tempting enough to beat, but it's not like it's a great value. I think I agree. The 11-1 shot on the Panthers, you're saying, hey, this Falcons thing, if Kirk Cousins doesn't look good, all of a sudden the division's wide open again. Like we've seen weirder things happen than, a number 1 overall pick at quarterback break out in his second season after a poor rookie season, especially with better coaching. So yeah, I don't hate the idea of backing the Panthers, but I'd rather just stay away from all this.
Yeah, I agree with that. John's saying Murray and Herbert won a back-to-back. I believe it's on my head. So real quick, an interesting thing here is Tom and I talked about it probably about a month ago. He brought up that he likes Michael Penix to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. If the Falcons drafted Penix because they think Cousins is sunk cost and Penix wins the job, I think he's like 75-1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year right now. If he becomes a starter week 1, that is going to plummet to like 10-1 or something. And if the Falcons are as good as they could be and if Penix is good as a rookie, like he's suddenly going to be one of the favorites to win it legitimately. And I don't think that's a crazy bet at 75-1. Like, granted, you're asking Cousins to not be good with the torn Achilles, but yeah, maybe there's a reason why they drafted Penix at 8 besides the longevity there. So I think that's a decent bet to make at 75-1.
Yeah, I think that one's especially interesting too if you're using it as a hedge for. I personally really like Jaden Daniels because his odds last I looked were longer than Caleb Williams, but I think his rushing upside and I just think the rushing yardage might give him an edge, sort of like Robert Griffin III in his early days with Washington. So I think I might end up betting Jaden Daniels, and then adding Michael Penix is just a flyer right now. And all it takes is one little setback for Cousins, and if Penix starts the season, plays the first few games, and looks good, he might run with that job.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm jealous of Walt's 5 o'clock shadow. So thank you. Which Disney princess does that resemble? I don't know. But yeah, no, I never shave all the way. I always leave something there. Chris asking, is Nala Disney princess a violet species is a company? I never considered Nala to be a princess. It's there's a bunch of females in the Pride and only one male. So I don't know. Like I don't know how lion dynamics work exactly, but it doesn't feel like she would be a princess of sort. I don't know.
She's princess adjacent, I'd say, but I don't think that she's considered a traditional princess.
Agreed. Lefty says Puka not winning that award is a disgrace. I mean, CJ Stroud was amazing. Like, I get it. Like, I think I would have given it to Stroud. Maybe I don't know. It's so close. It's really close. I could see it going either way. All right, Super Bowl odds here. I don't think we're gonna like anything unless the Falcons have a great number. I don't think they will. Yeah, the Falcons 24-1. Just that's way too high. I think they have to be like, for me to consider the Falcons have to be at least 50-1 or better. There's just too much hype with this team. I think they're the week one hype team that I want to fade. And they play the Steelers in week one, and they're going to be favored against the Steelers. I'm going to like Pittsburgh. The other teams here, you have the Panthers at 300-1. No thanks. You have the Saints 90-1. That is way too high as well. And then the Buccaneers are 55-1. All these odds suck. The Bucs and Saints need, for me to even like consider putting like $10 on them, they would have to be 500-1, and I still wouldn't do it. So yeah, I no interest for me here. Like I said, Falcons would need to be 50-1. Every other team 500-1. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I speculatively bet the Falcons before the offseason, knowing that they were probably going to get Kirk Cousins, and I think that number might have been in the 35 to 40-1 range, which I was like, this is appropriate for their upside. But once I saw what their moves were and what their draft was, I was kind of like, I got a decent value compared to what it is now. But, I still would have preferred the 50 there probably, or may not have pulled the trigger on that. But, yeah, I wouldn't touch any of these now. 24-1 on the Falcons, you will get a better number during the season unless they start red hot. Which I just don't think will happen. I think there's going to be at least an adjustment period for them. They could go 12-5, but I think they might have a loss out of the gate that will drop their odds a little bit. I question how far they'll drop because their division is so weak, but hey, I would rather wait.
Yeah, I think you can definitely wait. I don't think I want to bet them anyway, but the Falcons schedule, Falcons start against the Steelers, which I think you agree. I think Pittsburgh's still playing week one. Then they play at Philadelphia on Monday Night Football, and then they host the Chiefs. So this team could be 0-3 for sure. And then you are definitely going to get a 50-1 if they're 0-3 or better. So if you really want to bet the Falcons, just wait until after week 3 to do it.
Yeah, I think that at that point, if they go 0-3 and they drop in the 50 to 60-1 range, I think that's going to be a good time to bet them because they'll still have a very good chance of winning that division, I would think, unless we watch and we're like, oh, Cousins is cooked. And, if a ton of players for them get hurt, then, yeah, you're not going to want to do it. But if they stay relatively healthy and still go 0-3 or 1-2, you're going to get a pretty solid number on them.
Yeah, even better. I think they start 0-3 and like one of these 3 other teams starts 2-1. You're going to get a good number on them to win the division, like maybe plus 150, plus 180, something like that, like, or maybe even better. So maybe that's the play because like I said, I just can't see the Falcons winning the Super Bowl, but winning the division is definitely a possibility, even at 0-3. So I think that's something to look out for after week 3. I think I definitely want to investigate where Atlanta is now. I don't know what the exact schedule is. Like maybe there's a chance. I was about to say every team could be 0-3, but I know the Panthers Saints play each other week 1. So if like one team's 1-2 and the others are 0-3, then yeah, you're not going to get a great number. But one of these teams could start 2-1, just win flukily. But yeah, so I think that's something to look out for. Like I said, we're going to do more of this during the season. Yeah, love to see. Yeah. So Cassandra says Disney Princess will probably have a 5:00 shadow at some point. Yep, I agree. I think that's where we're trending. John says that Stroud was tremendous, though. He probably wins it any other year. Yeah, he was amazing. He posted some ridiculous numbers for a rookie quarterback. Lefty says there's no way Carolina's going to win more than 5 games. See, I disagree. I think Carolina's going to be more competitive. And remember, they have 6 easy-ish games on the schedule. Like they could go 3-3 or 4-2 in the division, and suddenly they only have to win 2 games out of the division to cross 5 wins. Like I think they could definitely do that. So Sue says, off-topic question for Jacob: do you think that if Dan Campbell was the coach for Edmonton last night, he would have gone empty net at the 6-minute mark?
Maybe not the 6-minute mark, but definitely earlier than I don't know Edmonton's coach's name off the top of my head. I think it's I think I know the old coach's name, Jay Woodcroft. I don't think it's still him. But I think Campbell would have probably around the 3-minute mark probably gone empty net to try to get that last one just to give McDavid a better chance. But they were just gassed by the end of that. Good effort from Florida, so can't complain too much about that.
Yeah, it's a shame they didn't come back all the way. John had a bet on Edmonton. He made it when they were down 3-0 in the series. It was like it was 13-1, John, I think. So yeah, you got a great number. So unfortunately, they didn't come back all the way. Harambe says, "Bro, how many tabs you need?" This, by the way, Harambe, this is a child's play. I have, this is 78 tabs. This is just one of 3 windows I've opened. And my main window, I have 84 tabs open. And then the third window, I have 42 tabs open. So that is how many tabs I need. I need about 200 tabs. I'm a 200 tabs kind of guy. You said you're 7 tabs guy. I'm 200. And I know where everything is too. Usually. Chris says, also topic, put a chick in the linguini and make her gay and super lame. I don't know what is that? I don't know what that's referred to, Chris. I don't know. I read everything that's posted to me here. Like I'm Anchorman. Chris says, "Oh, Harambe Memorial High School." He says, "Ron Campbell would have started the game with an empty net." That'd be funny. And Chris says, "And it's not a shame, you unpatriotic swine. Canada hasn't held the cup since before Florida was a team." Well, I don't know. I mean, like I feel like Canada likes hockey better than Florida does. And like. I think it's like their sport, you know. And I feel similarly if Toronto had an NFL team and like Toronto kept winning and like people in Toronto didn't really care about football, like it would be the same thing, you know. I would suspect that like people in Canada who don't really like football would be like, oh, it's a shame that we keep winning the Super Bowl. Like these American people would enjoy it a lot more, you know. But like, who in Miami likes the Panthers? Like, I'm sure they have some fans, but they can't have that many fans, I don't think.
Yeah, I hold it against them. They've knocked the Bruins out in consecutive years, so I get upset about that.
Yeah. Chris says that's one from the Paramount Plus South Park specials. I haven't watched those. Actually, man, I'm glad you brought that up because my friend gave me his Paramount Plus account to watch Picard season 3, and I forgot that South Park's on there. So I just never watched them because I didn't have it. And then I watched Picard. And now I have the credentials, so I can watch those. So thanks for that. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that now. Justin, yeah, 13-1. I forgot about the Canadian curse though. Yeah, it sucks. Love T says Puka broke a 60-year-old record. But Stroud broke some records too, though. Like I know they weren't as long lasting, but still. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either. And then Chris says, "Yeah, I know Canada obviously loves hockey more, and that's why it's so funny."
Fair.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so yeah, I guess that is it for the show. Thanks, guys, for watching and commenting. Really appreciate it. No show tomorrow. We had a show yesterday instead of tomorrow because tomorrow's the NBA draft. So Kenny and I did a show yesterday. So if you missed that, we did an episode about the top 5 mistakes fantasy football owners make. So you can go back and watch that. We'll be back on Thursday, though. Not sure if we're going to have a guest. Tom, I assume, is going to be on Saturday. I hope he's recovered from being sick. But yeah, on Thursday, we'll talk some stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about the debate, the presidential debate as well. So yeah, you can join us then. But yeah, thanks so much, especially to Kevin Kovac for the $10 super sticker and John with the $5 super chat. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Real quick, couple comments. Lefty says Pittsburgh looks good. This is a sleeper team. I don't know. Russell Wilson has me concerned, but they could be. And then John says, "True, Chris. I have Sabres season tickets. Basically, go to 38 games for free selling the Leaf home game tickets." Yeah. So, and then Chris says, "Oh, nice, smart strategy. I haven't gone to a Wings game in way too long. Just different now that I don't work downtown Detroit anymore." I went to a last Flyers game I went to. They lost 4-0 to Vancouver. They just like were a no show, and it was just.
Okay, so apparently Walt did break. I was trying to figure that out. Chris has alerted me to the fact that it's now my show. We were just about to do the sign off though, so I don't know how much energy I've got left in me, guys. To be completely honest, so we'll see. We've got some more comments. Love to says Atlanta was 8-9 with Ritter. They're gonna run away with this division. Yeah, it's possible. I can only go rogue for so long, Chris, because I actually don't have the ability to. I don't think I have the ability to end the stream. I don't think I have the ability to leave the stream. Yeah, this is gonna be a wild time, but yeah, thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it, and yeah, we're gonna see what how long it takes Walt to get back in here, but we're actually coming up on the 2-hour mark here. So this is pretty legitimately purgatory, as Chris is pointing out in the comments, that I have no access to be able to put up on the screen here. So anyway, yeah. Oh, there he is. Okay, I was stalling as long as I could. It turned into purgatory because I didn't have the ability to end the stream, put any comments
That's
up.
funny.
So
yeah, my internet shut off. I had to go to my backup internet. I don't know what happened, but yeah. So sorry about that.
All good.
Atlanta was 8-9 with Ritter. They're going to win away with this division. They had an easier schedule though. Keep that in mind. We've got Quacky takes. It's time for King Jacobs. Yeah, Jacob could have taken full control here, but yeah, you couldn't end the stream. That's funny. Yeah, Jacob gives us top 5 fantasy mistakes. So yeah, I was not pranking you. I lost my internet. Actually had to go to my hotspot here. I always have this as a backup. I don't know. Yeah, I don't have any banners. It just goes off. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, thanks guys for watching, and sorry about the mishap at the end, but really appreciate it. Like I said, no show tomorrow. We'll be back on Thursday. Jacob, anything to plug?
You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. We'll post some of my thoughts about just sports in general. NFL season, we're kind of in the dog days of summer now, waiting for stuff to happen. But got plenty of NBA stuff coming up. Golf stuff's going on. I'll be covering some Olympic stuff over at sportingnews.com too. So plenty of stuff going on in the sports world. It never ends. And, the NFL will be back before we know it.
Yeah. Chris says, well, then thanks to the entire Channel 4 news team. Walter, go F yourself, San Diego. Yeah. Great movie. I haven't seen that movie in a while, but yeah, I saw it in the theater and then once more. So yeah, we'll be back Thursday, like I said. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. Give me a job. Yeah. So yeah, thanks guys so much for commenting. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll talk to you Thursday.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.